girls. It's your old pal Stevie Coyle here. Nice to see you. Thanks for stopping in. This is Brian Kolner.
Hi, boys and girls.
That's what I say here. I've invited Brian in today to tell us all about 12-string guitars. It's they're bigger than 6-string guitars, aren't they?
And they're more complicated, yes.
They're a hell of a lot bigger. The 12-string guitar is an item that a lot of us have messed with in kind of...
Okay.
There you go.
I'm just the hired help today, friends.
Looks like it's happening. Okay, good.
Good. We're having technical difficulties.
Brian, tell us about your...
Personnel difficulties?
Personnel difficulties.
Yes.
No, in fact, let me crank this down just a little bit.
Overdriving, was it?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I think we're just about as down as we can get on the gain here. About like that. Okay.
Do you want me to talk about these beasties?
Yes. And tell us about yourself as well.
Okay, well, I am a good friend of Mighty Fine Guitars and my pal Stevie Coyle.
That's true.
I am a professor at University of California, Davis, and a visiting scholar at Stanford. So
What do you profess?
laser physics, optical clocks, things of that nature.
Okay, if you don't want to tell us, you don't have to.
Right, very good. But I have long had a passion for beasts with 12 strings.
Right,
you
right.
know, and
What got you first? What was your first?
I think, like many of us, it was that Friday evening in the dorm room in 1973 getting tuned up for the weekend when somebody puts that special record on the box. And the special record was My Feet Are Smiling, Leo Kottke.
Ah, right.
And I turned to everybody and said, that's really cool. Those guys are really ripping up a storm there. And the owner of said record said, oh no, that's one guy. And I said, oh no, I'm a guitar player. I hear 3 guitars in there. And then he handed me the dust jacket of the record, and the rest, as we shall say, is history.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. And
pretty
here you
phenomenal.
are.
And here I am, yeah.
A dozen or more years later.
Only just a few, and still struggling to figure this thing out.
Right. It's the gift that keeps on giving, really, isn't it?
And I learned early on that the man that built this guitar, Boźo Podunavac, is really quite an amazing gentleman. He emigrated here to the United States in 1959 from Serbia, then called Yugoslavia, and started building guitars under his own name in 1965.
Right.
And they were not very pretty, believe it or not. They were kind of ugly.
I see.
But they sounded...
But functional.
But very functional. They were
Yeah.
quite loud. And early adopters of his instruments were Peter Lang, and Leo Kottke, and John Fahey, and other
The whole
people.
Tacoma Records crowd.
Yeah, everybody swam in that circle, got exposed to him. And he was building in Chicago at the time, and against his better judgment, he moved from the Windy City and all the snow and summer heat to beautiful San Diego, and that's where many of his guitars were built. And then later on to Florida. This guitar was built in Florida, and...
Now, what year are we here?
This is 1995, and this guitar belongs to a great player who lives up in the state of Washington, and it's here for sale on consignment at Mighty Fine Guitars. And Bozo also had many apprentices, and one of his apprentices was Michael Propsom. And Michael built this beautiful 12-string, which is also here and for sale in Stevie's shop. It's quite extraordinary. He learned a thing or two from Bozo. I think he worked for him for 3 years or something as a student and as a general employee. Mm-hmm. And he's been building guitars for a number of years now, and very, very nice 12-string. And I should emphasize, these are completely different guitars. They have entirely different character, but they both are full-voiced and majestic. This guitar has quite a bit more rich overtones for the people that like that. And this guitar has a little bit stronger in the fundamentals and not as much in the overtones. The body wood on this is what? I can't remember. Is that...
rosewood.
It is?
Yeah,
okay. It's East Indian rosewood, and the top is Port Orford cedar?
Port Orford cedar.
Yeah. And this is also rosewood, Indian rosewood. I don't know if you can catch this, but they're completely different colors. This is quite a bit more orange and stripy to it. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, functional elegance. And
Well, let me ask you,
Yeah.
Propsom being a student, in essence, of Bozo, what are the similarities between these guitars? And what makes Bozo's, I guess, at the outset, different from other 12 strings, construction-wise? Is there anything in particular?
One of my favorite characterizations of Bozo's, I think, came from Frank Ford at Griffin, when he put an inspection mirror in one of my guitars once and said, "It's not that they sound so good, it's that they sound at all." Because they're built like battleships.
Right.
And I think Michael has taken a little bit of that but refined it and made it more graceful. And
Yeah.
I don't think he builds with the same sort of 2x4 construction technique that Bozo used to. And I should say that the guitar of this vintage, which is the 90s, was built when he returned to Luthier after a...
There's a question for
Yes,
Ian
we have a
Becker.
question.
Ian
Please.
Becker, could you please repeat the builder's name of the non-Bozo guitar?
Michael Propsom, P-R-O-P-S-O-M.
Aye.
Michael Propsom. Squirrely P up here on the headstock for Michael. Okay.
Right.
Okay, back to story. Bozo quit building for 10 years because of health problems. And he returned in the late 80s or early 90s. And then this guitar is from that vintage, from the 90s. And he started building lighter. And he told me this. I had many conversations with the man over the years. And I said, "Are your newer guitars different from your older guitars?" And he says, "Yeah, I build them a little lighter." He thinks it made them louder, and they could be. The old ones are built like battleships. Yes, we have a question.
Ian says thank you.
Oh, hi, Ian. How are you, man?
Good to hear from you again.
He's a repeat offender. Thanks for tuning in yet again. All right.
So, what else do we want to talk about?
We have another Bozo of
Earlier
previous
vintage.
vintage.
That's right.
We'll take a look at as well.
Now?
And why not?
Okay.
Sure.
I'll show it
We'll
to
get
you.
you playing some. And
Yep.
if we could, just for the science of it.
Yes, sir.
And I think it would probably show up through most speakers and most microphones. We could have you sort of play a bit of the same piece.
Yes,
on
I
each.
could, except this one's tuned radically different. So those
Oh,
are
yes,
two,
indeed. That's right,
those
isn't
two
it?
are
Yep,
synchronous.
yep. Okay.
This is a 1976 Bozo 12 string. Is that on the screen there?
Yes.
Beautiful.
And this is the 1995, and you can see
Yeah, come over this way a little bit.
you can
There
see
go.
that the body of the earlier guitar is a little bit larger in the lower bout, and you can see that the headstock defies gravity. It's like 3 inches longer. The headstock on the older guitar has full-size tuning machines, whereas the newer guitars have miniature tuning machines. And conjecture amongst Cognoscenti is that the reason he went to the smaller headstock, apart from limitations in lengths of mahogany available, is that he could fit the guitar in an $85 case.
That's a big plus.
That is a big plus. The
You
cases for this had to be manufactured special.
Right.
This guitar is built quite a bit heavier than this guitar, and as a result, it has very strong fundamentals and not very rich in overtones and harmonics, which is to my liking.
There you go.
Many people like the high overtone sound. A lot of people like the jangly sound of the Byrds and Roger McGuinn and things like that. I do not. It's just a personal thing. And this goes about as far the other direction as you can get. It's all very strong in the fundamentals.
Turn this down just a little. Wonderful. Now, I'm guessing that the heavier strings, you're using wound strings for the octaves on
Yes.
both the lower courses, is that correct?
That's correct. Both the 10-11 pair and the 11-12 pair are wound strings. The octaves are wound because it takes away, for me, that shrill high end the thumb hitting that A string normally generates.
Right.
And in fact, on the Propsom, I changed that plain number 10 string to a wound 12, and it changed the whole nature of the guitar.
I think so too.
Yeah, it really balanced it out quite
And
a bit.
that's, you know, some people with the 12 string, the idea, sort of what some people are looking for, is that jingle, jangle, jingle sort of sound, the Byrds, Roger McGuinn sort of sound, where you're getting lots of distinction between, well, it's distinction in one sense between the two strings in each course, but it does sort of homogenize the sound of the guitar. Everything sounds like a treble string in a sense.
Yeah.
And for fingerstyle, which of course Brian is playing here, Brian Kolner, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, he's playing fingerstyle, and for that you pretty much want to make a distinction between the bass courses. Just like on a regular 6-string guitar, you've got a distinction between the wound bass strings and the unwound treble strings. And that's kind of part of the charm of fingerstyle guitar is, as Brian thought, oh, those guys are really good. Those guys playing on that record are really good.
You want to
it
be able
sounds
to
like
hear
multiple people.
You want to be able to hear each individual note. Todd Hallowell called it the clarity of the inner voices,
Well,
or something like
he's a
that.
poet, for God's sake.
And a damn fine guitar player,
Damn fine
too.
guitarist as well. Hi, Todd. Are you out there?
I hope you are,
Nice to
Todd.
see you. Good. So, construction-wise, you say that the construction was heavier. Does that mean thick woods, heavy braces?
Yeah, if you compare the thickness of the braces in this to the thickness of the braces in this, for example, looking at them, they're definitely heavier. And the top braces look taller. If I look through the sound hole, they're a little bit taller, but we're talking about a 15% difference, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot, but I mean the guitar weighs a lot. With the massive headstock and the full-size tuners, the first night I brought this home, I played it for 2 hours and my back hurt.
I'll bet it did.
I've gotten used to it over the years. Oh, the other thing that you mentioned, which is important, Stevie, not just the wound string on number 11, the octave here, but the fact that I use much heavier gauge strings and then detune them.
Right.
Okay? This is another very personal thing about 12 strings. I don't voice my guitars at concert pitch. I don't like the sound of them. It's just a personal thing. I think they sound like harpsichords. But some people like that. And especially as accompaniment for singing, yeah, I think it works well. Some people really like that. So in detuning my guitars 3 to 5 half steps, I can use heavier gauge strings to balance out the loss in tension. You have to have tension to drive the top of the guitar, to make that top flex back and forth. As you pointed out recently, this is like a drum head.
Yeah.
And you're making it vibrate back and forth. So if you want to use detuned voicing on a guitar, you have to make it up by using thicker strings, greater tension.
Sure.
Now, to give people an idea, if you take a standard 12-string, 25.5-inch scale, this is entering serious geekdom here.
That's okay. Geek on.
Geek on. 25.5-inch scale with standard D'Addario light gauge strings pulls 251 pounds of tension, as compared with a 6-string light gauge, it's about 155, 160. So on a 12-string, if we use 251 pounds as the garden variety setup that you detect when you pick a guitar off the wall in any guitar store, if you use that as a reference standard, I was able to concoct a set of custom gauge strings on this guitar, for example, at about 243, 245 pounds. And it sounds full, it's easy to play, relatively easy to play as a 12-string goes, and I sleep well at night.
Yeah, right.
Knowing that the bridge isn't going to pop off or something like that.
That's brilliant.
Now Michael's guitar, this is detuned 3 half steps in open G, so it really makes it open E, and the bottom chorus is B, actually, and then this is
in a G tuning, right?
Yeah, this is E in a G tuning. Michael prefers a slightly different setup, and this is a slightly shorter scale too. He has medium gauge strings on there, detuned to D, standard tuning detuned to D, and I calculated the tension on his guitar, and it's 261 pounds. So it's a smidge over, a few percent over what you would normally feel in a 12-string on the wall.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sensible range, you know, from about 235 to 260 pounds of tension. You can play it easily, and it won't ruin your, presumably won't ruin your guitar. So anyway, that's a little lesson in string tension. It's important when you get onto 12 strings.
Right, sure is. Sure is. There's there's this kind of steps outside sort of some regular bounds. The thought is, I've got to be tuned to standard pitch. Well, unless you're singing and strictly accustomed to singing at standard pitch or playing with other people, and you don't want to do the calculations for what kind of chord shapes you need to use as opposed to what's happening on their guitars, tuning a guitar anywhere you want is really just fine. Now, the perfect pitch folks, those folks,
they're in pain always.
they're in pain always. And this is probably particularly painful to take A off of A, you know, what they're accustomed to hearing as an A note, off of 440. But Lordy, it's all up for grabs. And this is, if you're a Kottke fan, if you're a Peter Lang fan, if you're any of those 12-string Robbie Basho kind of, you know, the folks that we all kind of grew up with in the 70s playing 12-string guitar, if you're a fan of that sound, Brian, wasn't that almost always detuned below
Absolutely.
standard pitch?
Yeah, almost always. And even Pete Seeger on
Of
that
course.
massive guitar, I can't remember who built that for him.
Zemaidis, wasn't it?
It could have been, yeah. That guitar was, he had 70 thousandths gauge strings for his number 11 on that guitar. And it was a long scale.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah, crikey is the word.
Wow.
But if you often saw Pete Seeger with a capo at about the third or fourth
Right.
fret, or second or third or fourth fret, because he often played with people.
Yes, he did. He did.
Yes,
He
he
wanted
did.
to come up and be civilized.
That's right. So,
and be good company.
and I think people learned early on that if you took that guitar from the guitar store and bought a fresh set of strings for it and didn't know what you were doing and you tuned them up to concert pitch, pretty soon you needed to buy another guitar.
Yeah.
And it was harder than hell to play. And why do the strings keep getting higher and higher off the fingerboard every day?
Yeah. Until spring.
Something's wrong
You
here.
get that sound.
Now, I want to tell you about this neck.
Yeah.
It's nearly perfect. So that's a good thing. And, in fact, the Propsom neck is even better. Now, there's a weird anomaly amongst us Bozoistas. Bozo was never very good on setup, and if you look down the fingerboard, all of us guitar geeks know that the fingerboard, if you sight down it, should land right at the top of the bridge. I mean, just as Guitar 101, go see Frank Ford, frets.com. Frank's a great guy. Well, Bozo never either got the memo or understood that, and in his fingerboard, although the neck is dead straight on this with exactly the right amount of relief, the fingerboard lands about 2/3 the way up the bridge. And on Michael's, if you're doing it, it's probably exactly at the top of the bridge, or you know, within a millimicron or so. So that means that Bozo's guitars, some people look at them and say, this needs a neck reset. One should never have suggested that to the old man himself, because he would have gone off half in Serbian, half in English, and it would have been a trial.
At high volume.
At high volume. So there have been Bozos with neck resets, and they're very, very difficult to pull apart. So
Right.
if you can avoid them, by all means, do it. It just means you have to live with it, and you don't have really high saddles typically on Bozos. If you look at some images of old Leo Kottke playing, for example, you go, that doesn't have any saddle at all. But,
Just enough to get over.
just enough to get the job done.
Yeah.
But
We play us some more.
okay.
Folks, I wanted to thank Peghead Nation for tuning in, and whoever else is tuned in, I'll take a look here. And this is Brian Kolner. He's going to play us our.
Propsom, and you can hear right away the difference in these two guitars on just that opening riff from Morning's a Long Way Home. right hand. Fingers got cold while we were talking.
I know, doggone it, and it's cold in here today.
Yeah, and it's the fingers that look like they got 40 weight flowing through them right now.
That sounded good. Yeah.
It's got a good sound. But it's decidedly different. It's got a lot more high end than this. The temperature's getting to it.
Yeah.
This is one of the joys of owning a 12 string.
Nice.
Something.
Beautiful, beautiful plan.
Different sound.
Really different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to say, I agree, you know, and I think it's because perhaps I have programmed into my ear the same early Kotke Fahey records where it was the more fundamental,
Yeah.
less jingle, jangle, jingle
Yeah.
kind of sound
Yeah.
that's programmed in there as well.
Yeah.
Sonically, but, you know, for a lot of people, if you want to play the opening of Wish You Were Here, if that's one of your 12-string faves, you'd want something more like this, you know? If you want to play Hotel California, which never sounds exactly right on a 6-string guitar because it can't. Because of those unwound octave strings, what's being played on that guitar sounds like notes that are actually happening down in the bass courses, sound like notes up in the treble courses.
That's right.
So you can't get that sound on a guitar strung kind of like this. You'd want something strung. In fact, there's one more 12-string over there I'm going to ask you to play. Would you grab it, Barbara? Thank you. This is a Breedlove. This is a 10th anniversary edition, and it's made out of madrone wood of all things.
You know that I used to live on the Drone Trail. So isn't that
It's
karmic?
kismic. Kismic cosmic.
Look at that.
Yeah. Madrone back and sides.
Wow.
A nice Sitka top, I think. Yeah.
That sure is.
Right. And surprising for a guitar tuned to standard pitch with light gauge strings, so you've got unwound stuff happening. There's this guitar actually has some boom to it. It's got a lot of that bass to it, especially in the low string. Specific, folks.
Very much.
If you're
That's
looking
a good
for a
phrase.
finger style 12-string to do kind of Kotke, Fahey, Peter Lang kind of stuff, you probably want to detune your instrument a lot use heavier gauge strings. And if you want that set of gauges that Brian talked about earlier in the video, shoot me an email, stevie@mightyfineguitars.com, or here on Facebook. Send me a message and we'll get you those gauges.
Yeah,
and
happy to
tell you
share
what pitches are going to be safe.
Yeah, exactly.
In a safe range.
Yeah, so you
your guitar.
can sleep well at night.
Yeah, yeah. Sleeping is better than not sleeping.
Right. Rather than getting up every 20 minutes and seeing if your bridge is falling.
Yeah, yeah. And waiting for that sound of the bridge flying off your guitar in the guitar case.
I'm not really leaning into it, but you can tell that it does not quite have the majesty of the Bozo.
True, that's a good word.
But it's got a little of that high-end sparkle that a lot of people like in 12 strings, and a lot of luthiers build. I don't know if they build for it intuitively or intentionally, but it always seems to come out. I've found that builders of great 6-string guitars build 12 strings sort of with the same philosophy of their 6s, and it comes out to being a lot like this, you know. And I think if you took the extra brace out here that was required to make the thing not fold up and put 6 strings on it, it would sound like a magnificent Breedlove.
What were the guitars in the 60s that had a pipe running up the middle of them? Do you remember those? I bumped into a couple of those. In fact, I had one. Some of the German 12 strings. There was a Valley in Germany. I'll have to ask my pal about this. That built a bunch of fairly inexpensive guitars, very stylish. Mine was a Clera, and the headstock actually coming across the nut, the headstock didn't kick back. The headstock was still parallel to the fingerboard, but it dropped down below it.
Yes. And then they
there was
had
a bar
across
here that
was
you
it
had
the
to
Echo Ranger that way?
I think so.
Remember the
yes.
Echo EKO?
Oh yeah, EKO. Right.
I think those might have been made in Italy, actually.
Those might be the Italian ones. Yeah, those are.
So are Fiat's.
Well, yes.
Sorry.
Fix it again, Tony. All right. So there's all kinds of ways these things have been built over the years. I played a Fraulini 12-string recently that had a remarkable sound. It was built. It had all kinds of strange things floating around inside there to keep it together, keep it from exploding.
He's from my old home country,
right?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, really?
Yeah, he's a cheesehead.
Oh, how about that?
And he builds, his 12 strings are in the style of the Stella. Now that's another beast entirely.
Take us there.
The Stella is a slotted headstock 12 string that was from the 30s and 40s perhaps. That 12 string does not have what we call a pin bridge. Of course, there's no pins here either, so it's a lot, but this is Breedlove's approach. The idea of these guitars, and everyone in the shop here, I think, is that the strings terminate down here. So all the tension is being pulled on the top in kind of a torque or rocking mode. So when the strings vibrate up and down, they're actually rocking the bridge like this. So it's the front goes down a few microns, the back comes up a few microns, and then it changes place, and that acts as an air pump to pump air in and out of the box of the guitar. The Stella and almost all jazz guitars have what's called a trapeze bridge, where the strings pass over the top of the bridge and then are captured down here by a tailpiece. There is enough downward force that when the strings vibrate, they push the bridge up and down. It's a fundamentally different motion than the rocking motion of the bridge with a pin bridge. Gives it a completely different sound. The Stella was a trapeze bridge top, and it gave it a certain sound.
How would you characterize? I know it's so difficult to talk about sound. Could you characterize it in any particular way that's
without being pejorative?
I see.
I'm very opinionated. I don't care for the sound of trapeze.
Right.
Bridge 12 strings. I find them to really lack focus and clarity.
But a lot of great wash, a lot of great saturation.
Oh, and actually, you know what they are probably best for is bottleneck slide.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have that, like, as soon as you said wash, I thought of, yes, if you play blues and bottleneck slide on like that 12 string, it's probable that the trapeze style bridge is made for you.
Right.
Yeah. But I think for fingerstyle guitar, for some reason it loses the clarity of the inner voices, as Todd says.
That's it, right. Yeah.
And but maybe I just haven't played enough, and I've never played any of Mr. Fraulini's guitars, quite honestly. And being a modern builder who's probably studied a lot more than the people that Stella may have, I don't know, don't want to impugn their
Seems possible.
capabilities, that he probably has learned a few things over the years. So if you're out there, Mr. Fraulini, let's get together in Madison next time I'm there and have a brewski.
Sure.
I'm sorry, earlier
question.
Earlier on, could you repeat the builder's name on the non-Bojo guitar?
Again?
Oh, we got that.
We got that. Yeah.
Propsom. Yeah, Michael Propsom is the builder of this fine guitar.
Yep.
Gorgeous thing. Plays great, sounds wonderful.
And there are other students out there that are building. There's a fellow named Dan Davis that builds astonishingly gorgeous guitars, who also apprenticed with Bojo many, many years ago.
Where's he out of? Do we know?
Somewhere in the Midwest. I've had some email contacts with him. Very nice man. I'm thinking Ohio.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Alrighty.
yeah.
Cool. Any questions out there from the attendees? We're webcasting on Friday at noontime in California. So if you're watching this after that, I'm afraid we won't be able to take your questions, of course, at least not in real time. We'll try and get back to you with answers or something completely made up, afterwards.
Well, it's all made up.
Sure. So it's Big 12-string day here, folks. Thanks for tuning in. This is Brian Kolner, and great pal of the shop, lovely player. He's going to be playing here at the shop on April 22nd as part of the Mighty Fine Guitars kind of a showcase night. Let's see if I can get half a dozen players and friends of the shop that play and would like to get featured here, and I'd love to have them in. So he's going to be here on April 22nd with some of the folks. Will you play us out there, Brian? Thank you, Brian Kolner, and thank you all. See you next week. Tune on in again on a Friday noontime webcast here from Mighty Fine Guitars in Lafayette, California. I'm Stevie.